Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelby Ware. I am a program manager at the College Advising Corps. I'm joined by my colleagues, Juliana Avery and Kaya Walker, who will introduce themselves in just a moment. And they will be talking about college list building today. So Juliana, I'm passing it over to you.
Hey everyone! So the mission of College Advising Corps is to increase the number of low-income, first-gen, and underrepresented students in higher education. Our team of virtual advisors works within the College Point initiative, which is supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies. College Point is a virtual advising program that helps high-achieving, low to moderate income students navigate the entire college application process. So building your list, going through the financial aid process, making those decisions, finding scholarships, entirely for free. If you have any topics you want us to cover, let us know in the comment section on the webinar or leave a comment on the YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page so you'll get alerted when we go live in the future. Today we're going to be talking about building the college list and why that's one of the most important parts of the college application process. It's important to remember that you're not committing to anything at this moment when you're building your list. You're setting up options for yourself, and you want to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position possible so that in the spring you can decide what the best fit academically, socially, financially is for you. We're going to talk more in depth about why it's important to have a good college list, but we're going to introduce ourselves first. My name is Juliana Avery. I use she, her pronouns. I went to Guilford College where I studied political science.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kaya Walker. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a second-year advisor. I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and I majored in global studies with a concentration of health in Africa and also anthropology. So just in terms of the structure of this panel today, so we will take relevant questions after each section. And at the end of the presentation portion, we will respond to questions as well. So I promise we're not ignoring you if we do not respond right away. Additionally, we have some of our advisors that are off screen helping us respond to any questions that come in. So you might see responses from the CSE advisors account from Warner Lambeth, Shelby Ware, Toby Kinsel, or Destiny Talley. Finally, just to let everybody know, any inappropriate comments or questions will be deleted, and that person will be kicked out of the call or blocked from our social media account. So please keep everything related to the content today and be respectful of everybody's questions and the space today. So we will go ahead and get started talking about what makes a good college list. So the importance of creating a good college list is first and foremost making sure that you create a balanced list so that in the spring you'll be in the best position when it comes to picking a school. So this comes down to three types of schools. The first one are the first kind of genre of schools are safety schools. So we recommend that students have at least 1 to 2 safety schools. So, generally one of these should be or will be in-state, an in-state public, maybe your in-state flagship school. So the definition of a financial and academic safety school is that number one, it's important that it is financially affordable, especially during these uncertain times. So making sure that this school at the end of the day, as a backup, will be financially suitable for you and your family to afford. And then also in regards to academic safety, making sure that your scores, your GPA, and your test score averages, they all fall above the average test scores for a school, or that, on average, the acceptance rate is at least 60% or above. So one metaphor that we use to talk about financially safety schools is to imagine if you're applying to a job. It's always a good idea to apply for your dream job, as always, making sure you're applying for the job that you want, but also apply to other jobs you wouldn't mind doing for a while, just in case you were not offered a position at the place of your choice. So this is kind of how we think of safety schools. It's definitely your top choice, but if all else fails, you still have to have a backup. We want you to make sure that at the end of the day, you still have choices when it comes to the spring. And also make sure that also your safety school is a school you wouldn't mind going to, because you have to be happy wherever you end up, regardless of where that is. So make sure your safety school is, at the end of the day, a school that you would most likely easily get into, is financially affordable, and you would be happy going to. And yes, so match schools. So we definitely recommend that students have 2 to 5 match schools. And so match schools are schools in which your transcript mirrors the average freshman. Therefore, your GPA and test scores and coursework are all on par with those freshmen that are typically admitted. On average, in terms of percentage of acceptance rates, it's generally between 20 to 60% for students. Again, depending on your academic rigor, this could be, plus or minus a couple of percentage points, but that's typically the range in which we suggest for students to look for in terms of match schools. And then also in terms of reach schools. So reach schools are, unlike a match school, reach schools are colleges where your academic qualifications are slightly below or below the average of the accepted student. We recommend that students look into 2 or 3 at minimum reach schools. And in speaking in general terms, if the acceptance rate is under 20%, that school is an automatic reach for pretty much every student across the US. One thing to make note of is that all Ivy institutions are considered reach schools for every student. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply to them, but you don't want your whole list to be filled with Ivies and other schools with low acceptance rates, just because those are, a toss-up with just about every student that applies. You want to make sure that you're also applying to schools that, again, are match schools and safety schools that you would be happy going to. And then also another thing to consider when it comes to Ivy schools and prestigious schools, while the prestige might be there, and that is a very big factor that's drawing a lot of students towards those schools, they're all very different in environment and what they have to offer. So make sure that you do your research into the climate and environment, just because you want to be happy there. And then also, on the other hand, don't be intimidated by these low acceptance rates. If you're one of the students who thinks of these reach schools and immediately thinks you can't get in, you're already counting yourself out. So if you don't apply at all, then you already know that it is a guaranteed 100% chance that you will not get accepted. So it can never, ever hurt to apply to any school, because no dream is too high or out of your reach. So, definitely keep those options open, and, do your research into those schools as well. So if we have any questions.
Yeah, so we have a really great question about what should your top factors be if you haven't taken either the ACT or the SAT when creating your college list. So something that's really different about this year from previous years with college apps is that a lot of schools are test optional. So if you haven't taken it, if you're unable to take a standardized test and the schools you're looking at are test optional, you don't need to feel pressure. Like if a school says it's test optional, it truly is not going to count that against you. I would say looking at your GPA is going to be the most important thing when deciding if a school is going to be a safety, a match, or a reach school. And keep the questions coming. We're also going to talk about other factors to consider in college apps in just a moment. Okay, we'll come back to questions in a little bit, but we're going to go over what do you need to know, what are really important things to consider when you're trying to build your list. First, it's so much easier to add schools now that offer bid aid rather than waiting till the spring and trying to apply to schools that have rolling deadlines and then applying to like last minute scholarships. You're really going to save yourself a lot of work and a lot of stress if you just put in the time now to do some research and figure out what are the right schools for you. And when you're working on building your college list and you realize which schools are going to be your top choices, then we really want to encourage students to think about applying either early action or early decision, because there are so many benefits to applying early. Some of them being you reduce the stress by cutting down the time spent on waiting for a decision. You save time and expenses of submitting multiple applications if you're accepted. You gain more time once accepted to look into housing and otherwise prepare for college, and also just like enjoy your senior year and not feel stressed waiting to figure out what's going to happen in college. Some schools even have higher acceptance rates for students who apply early, and it allows you to reassess your options and apply elsewhere if you're not accepted. definitely talk to your advisor to see if applying early action or decision is the right move for you. The next thing we really like, that's a huge factor, is looking at the location and climate. I think one thing you need to decide fairly early on is what states you're interested in going to college in. And you can narrow this down by looking at regions, or you can look at like the states that surround your home state. But you're going to need to like get a firm idea, because that's really going to help you figure out what schools are possible options for yourself. Also think about the climate. That's something that a lot of times I think ends up being put on the back burner. And I had a student last year who was really interested in Yale, except she hates the cold and she hated rain. And so we had to meet and talk it out, and we found other options. But you're going to be living there for 4 years. So you want to make sure it's a really good environment for you, where you're going to like prosper and just be happy. Size of the school, super important. And some questions you can think about are like, what does your ideal classroom look like? You know, do you mind being in a big lecture hall? Do you want to be in small classes where discussions are happening every day? Like, what's the ideal situation for yourself? And something you can do if you're unsure, which is totally fine, is go on like virtual tours for a small college, medium college, and a large university, and you'll get an idea of what the campus culture looks like. Also check out our Instagram. We have student takeovers that have happened in the past in our highlights, and so you can get an idea of what the size of the campus looks like and just how everything works there as well. Another thing that is really, really important, cannot stress this enough, is the graduation rate, because that's a really good indicator of the academic, social, and financial supports that are going to be available at the college you're going to. And so we really recommend schools that have graduation rates that are 70% or higher, because that means that school's been able to support the majority of their students and make sure that they've graduated on time. And part of that support is like the additional resources that the campus is able to provide. So looking at the free tutoring that's available, the career development centers, the counseling centers, like there's so much on campus and like support that is in your tuition, and you want to make sure you're taking advantage of all of those things. And also, if you're like, how do I find schools with high graduation rates? Check out the College Point match list. Your advisor is happy to send it to you if you just text them and you're like, can I have this list with high graduation rates? They will send it to you right away. We have a great resource for that. And the last thing that is really helpful, especially if financial aid is a big concern for you, is the percent of need met. So the amount that the school covers is your need met. So basically every college has to come out and like proclaim to the world exactly how much need they're going to meet for each student they accept. And so it can be from 0% to 100%. But whatever the school doesn't cover is your unmet need. So for example, if your financial need is like $20,000, but your school says they'll only cover 10,000 of that, then your need met is 50% if the school costs 20,000. Does that make sense? And a good way to find out like what is the percent of need met is to go onto College Board's Big Future and you look up a specific school, and then you go on the side underneath paying, and then you click on financial aid by the numbers, and you see that nice little percentage. You can see Northwestern meets 100% of need, which is really great. If you have more questions about financial aid, which I'm sure you do, definitely check out our upcoming live in November. That's going to be all about financial aid and talking about like really important factors of that process.
So we had a question come in, and it says, some schools have restrictive early action when I was doing research. What does that mean? Great question, Abraham. So restrictive early action is a type of early action deadline that you can meet for, there's only a handful of schools that do offer restrictive early action. And the caveat to restrictive early action is that similar to early decision, you can only apply to that one school restrictive early action. You cannot apply to any other college early action. That does not mean that it is binding. It is not a binding application. So if you do apply restrictive early action and you are accepted, you do not have to accept that college, and you still have until May 1st to go through all of your decisions to make an educated decision on where you want to attend. So know that if a college offers restrictive early action, that's something that you're going to have to weigh regarding your college list. If there are other colleges that just offer normal early action, you have to then think, do I want to apply to multiple schools early action, or do I want to apply to this one school restrictive early action? And that will really come down to what's on the top of your list. and what schools you really are interested in, and whether or not applying restrictive early action to that one school will outweigh any other restricted or early action deadlines that you want to meet. So definitely reach out to your advisor if you have one to speak through, what restrictive early action means for you in terms of applying to college, and which school to apply restrictive early action, if that is right for you, or whether you should go the route of applying to multiple other colleges early action. So great question. All right, so I don't see any other questions coming in. So we will go ahead and talk about resources that you can use to build a good college list that we've been talking about. So the first thing that you can do is reach out to your advisor. If you haven't already had your college list building meeting with your advisor, schedule that as soon as possible, just because a lot of deadlines are starting to come up. There's some early action and early decision deadlines that are coming up already October 15th, and then there are some November 1st and November 15th. So definitely, talk with your advisor. They would be more than happy to talk through some great options for you, and create a solid plan in terms of which deadlines you want to meet. The second option that you can utilize is the college point match list that Juliana mentioned. So the college point match list is updated every year. It has tons of colleges all across the country that are chosen based on their high graduation rates. So again, those are graduation rates of at least 70% or higher, which just proves that that school has the resources to help the majority of their students get to graduation and succeed within 4 to 6 years. So definitely reach out to your advisor. They have the link that they can supply to you to look through that list, and that list has a bunch of great statistics on those colleges, such as the population size, where it's located, the average test scores, the average GPA, the cost, the percent of need met. So a bunch of great data points that you can use to narrow down your search. Another great resource is bigfuture.org. I love their search tool. So it can be helpful for you to build a college list. And it is provided through College Board. So odds are you already have an account. And so whenever using the feature, they have a bunch of filters that they have in place. And so you can filter through almost 4,000 colleges based on your preferences, and kind of see what other colleges are out there if you're not very aware of what's outside of either your state or your area. And then another thing that you can use to build a college list is use an Excel sheet. Or any type of organization to keep track of the schools that you're interested in and their deadlines. I highly recommend this for just about every student, just because it is really important that you keep track of those deadlines and make sure you're checking off everything that a school needs, just because you do not want to forget something or miss a deadline or anything. So make sure that you are keeping organized with all of your college applications, especially if you have multiple going on all at once. And also reach out to your advisor as well and let them know which deadlines and which schools you're applying to, so that they can also help nudge you if you have any deadlines coming up that you maybe are falling behind on, or you need assistance with. So I will hand it over to Juliana, and she's going to talk about some great pro tips when it comes to choosing colleges and creating your list.
Okay, so we're going to go over just like our best tips boiled down. So you need at least one in-state public school on your list as a financial safety, because in-state public schools typically have like a lower sticker price of attendance. So you want to make sure that you're always looking at least one of those on your list. And if your in-state public school has a really low acceptance rate, you're going to want to add more than one. Definitely check out the honors colleges at your public schools and also at the other schools you're looking at, just because if you're an honors student, sometimes you're eligible for more financial aid, more scholarships, and you get like priority registration for classes, which is really cool. And sometimes you can even live in like your own honors dorm. So for sure do that. Also, out-of-state public schools are rarely ever a good financial choice. So if financial aid is important to you and you live in North Carolina, applying to the University of Florida or the University of Alabama is not going to be a good financial choice, just because they tend to save all of their in-state aid for in-state students. That's not to say like don't apply to anyone ever, but if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you're balancing that out with other good options on your list. The few exceptions to that are like the University of Michigan, UVA, or UNC, just because they've committed to giving out-of-state students also good aid. Next, we're going to talk about the net price calculator. So every college has to put out a net price calculator, which is this tool you can find online. Just Google like UNC net price calculator, and you'd input all of your financial and like demographic information. And then UNC would show you a sample award letter that a student similar to you received in the past. And so that's a really great way to get an idea of what your financial aid package could look like. And then additionally, we want to talk about like private schools and how they can be really good options. And I know a lot of times when like I was looking up schools when I was applying to college a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, they cost so much more money. But in reality, they have a lot more money because they have an endowment. And so make sure you look at the percent of need they meet and don't dismiss them as an option altogether, because they could end up being cheaper than a public school. And make sure you do not apply to for-profit schools just because they're not great.
All right. So now we will open it up to questions. If you have any questions about anything that we discussed, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat box if you are joining us on this panel. And also for our friends on the YouTube Live, feel free to chat in your questions and we will have somebody copy and paste your question so that we can get to it.
So something else that I think can be a really important thing to do is to look at like the history associated with the schools that you're interested in. So for example, like I know a lot of students really love NYU and think it's a really cool school, and they do have a lot of really great things to offer. However, because they're so popular and because they've grown so fast, they're not able to give out really great financial aid packages normally. And so definitely being aware of that when you apply and knowing, you know, this is a cool school and I'm really interested, but I'm probably not going to get a good financial aid package. And if you know that you need money and like funds from the school and from just a lot of different sources in order to go to college, being aware of that I think can be really helpful. And that goes for like schools outside of NYU, but that's just the easiest example that comes to mind.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, kind of something that was brought up earlier, just know that all colleges have different environments and different feels and different vibes, especially when it comes to prestigious institutions. I know a lot of people kind of want to apply to every and all prestigious institution, but you know, just whenever you're thinking about those types of schools, you know, Cornell is in the middle of nowhere in New York, and that's great for some people, but Columbia is smack dab in the middle of New York City. Also, Stanford is in a place where it is hot. It's on the West Coast. And Duke University is a big, huge sports school. So you definitely want to make sure that you are actually doing your research and making sure you're going to be happy in that environment. And I also see that we do have some questions coming in. So one is, what college search tools do you recommend? So definitely Big Future, their college search tool is going to be extremely helpful in terms of narrowing down school choices based on your preferences. They have almost, I think, 4,000 accredited universities on College Board. So pretty much all the main schools and state schools are going to be on there, including community colleges. So that can be a great first step. I know when I was applying, I did not have an advisor. Big Future was my advisor when it came to choosing colleges. And then also, if you have an advisor through College Point, we do have the College Point match list, which can be really helpful in looking at schools that have those high graduation rates. And then, you know, also, you know, using Google. Google can, you know, be really helpful. And I always tell my students, it is also important that you look at pictures and Google Images because you have to like the environment that you are going to be in. So definitely using school websites and seeing what programs and the type of atmosphere that they provide to their students is going to be crucial as well.
I see a really great question about how a student applied to Questbridge and they're making their college list currently by looking at a lot of the partner schools, which are all excellent schools. Should I include colleges outside Questbridge on my list? You absolutely should. So all of the Questbridge partners are great schools, and I definitely think applying to them is a good idea. But they all have really low acceptance rates, and Questbridge is so competitive. So in order to make sure you're putting yourself in like the best position possible, you're going to want to make sure that you're applying to at least like 1 or 2 safety schools and 2 to 4 match schools, in addition to all the Questbridge partner schools you're looking at. Yeah, Kai, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, so Samuel, hi Samuel, you are my student. So your question is there a significant difference in financial aid between Questbridge National College Match and Questbridge regular decision? So great question. So when it comes to ranking schools, there are 2 kind of paths that you can take. You can either choose to rank colleges for a chance to get the national scholarship, which would be the fully funded 4 years, depending on your demonstrated need, to attend an institution. So if you have gone that route and you submitted your Questbridge application on the 29th, you have until October 15th to decide whether or not you want to rank and go the option of getting that national scholarship or go Questbridge regular decision. So to kind of break down the scholarship. So when I say fully funded, it really depends on your EFC. So basically colleges that are partner institutions guarantee that you will end your 4 years of university with no loans. That is a major thing, especially because loans within undergrad and graduate school are really, really, popular. The average is around $30,000 to $35,000 a year after 4 years of college. So whenever you match, and if you get matched to a school, you will know that you will not have loans at the end of the day. That being said, schools do take into account your expected family contribution. So let's say your expected family contribution is $1,000, determined from the FAFSA. So Questbridge will meet your demonstrated need, and then they want students to contribute at least somewhat to their education. So you might get work study or some other form of payment. Maybe you might have to pay like $500 or whatnot, but it really depends on your EFC. But you will end school with no loans, so it's a great option financially. And then also regarding Questbridge regular decision. So one thing, if you don't get matched, or if you decide to go Questbridge regular decision, generally you can apply to all 42 schools. At that point, technically Questbridge regular decision and other schools through a Common App or Coalition App or through college websites. And they do say that students who apply through Questbridge regular decision, there's a stamp that says you were selected as a Questbridge semifinalist or finalist. And that generally leads to a very generous financial aid package from that school. Again, it really depends on what your EFC is going to be. But it can be a really great package. It really just, again, depends on your EFC. So both are great options. Again, it really depends on if you're okay with the binding aspect of the national scholarship, of the scholar match, but definitely reach out to your advisor. And Samuel, you and I also can talk through this as well.
Yeah, I think also like the biggest difference between going to a partner school and getting aid from them directly or Questbridge is that Questbridge really thinks about like your living expenses, so like the cost of textbooks, the cost of transportation, you get like a budget for like you can spend. And so you won't get that if you just go straight to the school for sure, but you always will if you do the match. And so that's like the biggest difference, but they're super similar, like Kaya said. So I see another great question. Can I just search for the net price calculator? Is there a reliable website to use? And there actually is. I'm going to drop the link in the chat and you can go there and then you just type up any of the colleges in the search bar and it'll take you directly to their net price calculator.
Great. We also had some questions come through in the chat, so I will answer the 2 ones that came in. So what are some examples of academic fit factors? Same question for social fit. So academic fit factors are really going to be I guess a statistical standpoint where you can look at it is the average GPA of incoming freshmen. And if you've taken the SAT or ACT, if you've had that opportunity, if your scores are kind of on par with the average test scores of previous incoming classes, that can kind of give you a sense of whether or not, your academic rigor and what you're used to in terms of taking classes, if you're going to be kind of in the average range of the incoming student body. Then again, when it comes to academic fit factors, it really is going to depend on you and what you are comfortable with and what you really want from an experience. But realistically, every college is going to give you an education. So, they will live up to giving you a solid education. So it really comes down to, um, what environment, academic environment do you want? Do you want more of a research oriented environment? Are you looking for more of a collaborative environment? And that can really kind of steer your mindset in terms of, is this going to be an academic fit for me? Is it going to intellectually, drive me? Is it going to be bringing me in the direction where I want to go and how I think and how I like to view the world? So definitely that comes with looking into programs. Again, first starting with just the statistics and then looking into the programs you're interested in and seeing if that is going to, actively engage you and you're really interested in how they approach that kind of academic subject. And in terms of social fit, again, it's going to depend on the type of school. There are a lot of schools that are very sports oriented. Like I know my undergrad, UNC Chapel Hill, we are a big sports school. So that was a huge part of our social culture was around sports and, gearing up for the big basketball game. There are also some schools that are smaller. If you want a school with a religious affiliation, there are schools out there that, really hold those in high standards. And then, there are some schools that are out in the middle of nowhere if you're looking for more of a quiet, calm academic experience, And that really comes with just looking at, number one, the size of the institution. And, generally bigger schools have more, social sports activities going on, or just more of a quieter, more close-knit environment. So definitely looking at where it's located, either rural or urban, and the size of the school. And then also, how can you tell if a school is safe for DACA and undocumented students? That's a great question. So definitely, if you have an advisor, advisors definitely have resources to send you regarding, schools that are really great for documented students or undocumented students. So, and also states have different varying policies. So the most welcoming states typically are Texas, California, Washington, New York, and other states as well. But also, if you cannot fill out the FAFSA, schools that require the CSS profile might be the best option for you in terms of looking for schools that, will support you financially and meet 100% need for undocumented students. And then, again, it really comes down to looking at your in-state policies and seeing whether or not they have, open policies for allowing in-state tuition for undocumented students. And if not, reaching out to other states surrounding you or across the nation that do offer very open policies regarding undocumented students. So definitely reach out to your advisor or your counselor at your school and see what options there are for you. Because I promise there are options out there. Like I know Georgia doesn't really have the most open policy regarding undocumented students, but Emory University within Georgia offers 100% need for undocumented students, 100% demonstrated need. So definitely reach out to your advisor or your counselor.
I see a really good question in the chat box about how can we distinguish academic programs? In other words, what should we look for when it comes to the academic side of schools? Because I've seen too many info sessions, but they're starting to sound the same. I completely understand what you're saying. I've been to a lot of sessions and they really do begin to bleed together. I think there are a couple things you can really look for to get an idea if a school is going to meet what you're looking for academically. Looking at the professor to student ratio is a great way to start, seeing like, do TAs lead classes or is it always professor based? Does the professor hold office hours? Are they going to be available for you to go like either in person and talk to them or on their Zoom link and talk to them about things in class that you want to keep discussing? Like I went to a very small school. And so I went to my professor's office hours every single week and would spend like 30 minutes talking about the lessons that we were covering. And I really appreciated that, but that's not necessarily something that everyone needs in a school. Also looking at like the research opportunities that are available, especially if you're in STEM or other things that's your like area that you really are passionate about, seeing if as a freshman you're going to be able to start being an active participant in research and like learning more and more about the subject that you're really passionate about, I think is a really great way to see if that program is going to be like the right fit for you. I know at the University of Chicago, they have a ton of opportunities for research. And so that could be a really great option if that's something you're passionate about. Also, something you can do is a lot of schools publish their course catalog online. And so if you want to go look at the different like elective classes that they offer, I think that's a great way to see like, what are the more creative classes that they're offering to their students? Are there any that really speak to you? And it's not guaranteed that they'll be offered again, but I think seeing what they've had in the past is a good way to get an idea of what will be available in the future. Anything else you want to add to that, Kaya?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, so also for anybody who did ask the question, and students, I did supply a list that you can use in terms of schools that do offer great financial aid. And then also another question that came through is what number of colleges is considered too much to apply to? So realistically, there is no magical number. Like when it comes down to it, it really depends on what you want to apply to. I would say a good minimum is 5. Again, because it's really important that you are meeting the safety match and reach schools, around the average number, just because, you want to set yourself up for options when it comes to the spring. And that realistic, it comes with applying to a multitude of colleges that meet what you're looking for academically and financially, and some that, would be safe, and then some that also, you're reaching for, but are not out of the scope of reality. Again, you can't apply to less than that. There's no, set number that you have to apply to, but that's just kind of the recommended minimum. Again, the maximum that we kind of tell our students to aim for is around 12, I would say. And that just comes with, realistically the time that it takes to put in to, create a well-rounded application that can become really stressful, especially if you have a lot of schools on your list, and I've had one student last year who applied to over 30 schools. I've also had students who applied to 1 school or 2 schools. And I would say when it comes to applying to, I would say 15, 20, or even 30 schools, that's okay if you have the time and the resources to do that. But I tell my students that it is much better to put in the work to make a really great and solid application to 5 to 12 schools, and make sure you're spending time on those essays, and make sure that you are 100% confident in the application you are sending out, rather than do mediocre on like 20, 30 applications. So talk with your advisor on what is best for you and what deadlines you can meet, but also if you stagger your deadline and take away the trying to meet deadline for school. So definitely talk to your advisor about, the number of schools you should apply to, but a good place to start is between 5 and 12.
Also, if you do apply to Questbridge, your list is going to be much larger than that, and that's totally fine, just because Questbridge is a whole other game. Something else I thought we should plug and like just make sure everyone knows about is that next week we're going to be having the College Search Unplugged event, where students who were previously in the College Point program last year are actually going to be talking about what their experience at their colleges this year has been like. So you're going to be able to really talk to current students and get like what they're experiencing versus like the pitch that admissions likes to give out. So I definitely think everyone should go to that and make sure you put it on your calendar. Do we have any more questions? What is the process of getting fee waivers? That's a great question. So once you start working on the Common App or the Coalition app, often there are a lot of different questions that you'll go through answering. One of them being like, did you get free lunch when you were in high school? Or did you qualify for an SAT fee waiver? And typically when you click yes to those, then you'll automatically be qualified for fee waivers. So it's really just going through the process of like filling out all the paperwork, which I know can be a little bit tedious at times. And one thing you can do if the fee waiver isn't appearing is actually call the university and be like, hi, I really love this school. I would love to apply, but I'm not able to afford the application fee. Is there any way I could get a fee waiver? Colleges want you to apply. They want you to explore, like to consider them as an option because you're all really great students. So they're going to like work with you. And I think just in general in the college application process, getting used to like advocating for yourself and reaching out to schools is going to be a skill that's going to be super helpful. So getting comfortable calling the admissions office and just being like, hey, I submitted this, but I haven't heard anything back. Like, what's going on here? Or like, hey, I saw this error message. Can you help me? Like just being really confident in yourself and knowing that like you are the dream demographic, you know, you're who they're looking for. And so you're worth their time. And I know phone calls can feel scary, but it's worth it.
All right, so we also had a question come in. Are HBCUs and minority serving institutions affordable? Are there any financial safeties in that regard? So that's a great question. So it is an unfortunate thing that a lot of HBCUs do not have the most funding in terms of, you know, other institutions and predominantly white institutions. I will say that there is one institution, historically Black university, that does meet 100% need, which is Howard University, located in Washington, D.C. I actually had the privilege of visiting Howard last October and was really impressed with their academics and their structure and their environment. So if you are somebody who is interested in, you know, they have a plethora of majors, but they also had really strong business majors and science programs. And also being located in Washington, D.C., there was a lot of talk around internships and the fact that they are very encouraged there. And so if internships and getting hands-on experience is something that is really important to you, Howard can be a great option for you. And also on top of it, they do offer 100% need. And also they do have a scholarship program for eligible seniors. They will offer you 50% reduced tuition for your senior year. And so that's a really great program. And that's just to encourage students to continue on to their senior year and get through graduation. So again, Howard can be a great option if you're looking for some financial safeties. In other terms of finances, I would say, you know, it really just, you know, if you're really looking for an HBCU and it doesn't look financially feasible to you, definitely looking at scholarships, especially for scholarships regarding minorities, and reaching out to your advisor in that sense. There are a lot of scholarships out there for students who would like to pursue an education at an HBCU. I know both of my brothers went to HBCUs and they relied on some private sources in order to gain funding. So yeah, there are options out there for you. So definitely look around for options, you know, Googling scholarships for HBCUs and different scholarship programs you can look into, and also private scholarships as well. But also, again, if you're looking for one institution that really does offer 100% need, Howard would be the best bet in that sense. But there are a plethora of other HBCUs that also can work with you in that regard.
I see another question from Michelle about fee waivers and what you have to do in order to get them. And typically fee waivers are directly tied to like your family's income and how much they made within a year. And so again, going through the Common App or Coalition and just filling it out and saying whether or not you got free lunch or if you had a SAT fee waiver will be a good indicator. But if you don't automatically receive it, then again, you can reach out to colleges and just ask for it directly. But yeah, I think that's everything to do with fee waivers. Kai, am I missing anything? Okay.
Well, we don't have any questions at the moment. We will definitely leave it open for a minute or two to see if any other questions. Oh, yep, we do. Okay, so another student asked, when a student completes a net price calculator, does that mean they'll be guaranteed the level of financial aid shown? So not always. Again, a financial or a net price calculator just kind of shows you a based on the information that you input, the kind of average financial aid letter that it might look like for a student in your similar situation. But also, if you either entered in data wrong or there's other situations that the FAFSA will look into, it can look different. And it can look different depending on a number of factors that are happening within your family or financial situation. So yes, while they can be very helpful, and we always encourage our students to look at net price calculators, do not heavily rely on it and take that for 100% guarantee of what your financial aid package will look like. That's probably a ballpark and a good indicator of whether or not this is going to be financially affordable for you, but do not take it for this is the exact amount of money that I will be given. So it's a good thing to keep in mind and to base your choices off of, but you never know when it comes to getting your financial aid award letter. So it can be different.
When do you have to sign up for college interviews? That's a great question. So not all schools are going to offer college interviews, especially larger schools tend not to do that unless you're applying for a specific scholarship. And if that's the case, then you'll get outreach from the school letting you know what the next steps look like. But if you're applying to a school like Kenyon, like a really small liberal arts college, they tend to have the ability to do those interviews. And I'm not sure if they're happening over Zoom this year or what it looks like, but you can definitely call, especially if you want to do an interview. Sometimes there will be things like alumni interviews where people who live in the same area as you and they went to that school will come and do a phone call interview with you just to talk about what are you interested in? Why do you like this college? Is it a good fit? And I think something to keep in mind if you do end up having an interview is I know that it can feel kind of intimidating, but these people really just want to talk to you. They really genuinely just want to hear about what you're excited about. People love hearing what high school students are into, and especially students like yourselves who have all done excellent in school and are really passionate about a lot of different things. They want to know what you could bring to the college, and they want to convince you that why the college could be a good option for yourself. Also, your advisor may be able to do mock interviews if you do end up having one coming up. So make sure you reach out to them and ask if that's an option.
So we had a question come in. Does not having test scores hurt your application? Great question, because I know that is a big point that a lot of colleges are making, especially this application year with COVID going on. So number one, it will depend on whether the college has gone test optional or test blind this year, or are completely ignoring it, or if they are still requiring it. I will say that at this point, just about every college that I can think of has gone test optional, just due to the sheer number of test sites that have been canceled or rescheduled. And they definitely don't want to put students at risk for contracting the virus or taking it home. So colleges are very, very aware that this is going on nationwide. So again, with those schools that have gone test optional, which again are most schools, test optional means exactly what it means. It means test optional. And that means that not submitting your test scores will have absolutely zero weight in your application process. So they will not dock off points, or they will not hold you accountable for not submitting test scores. They will not think that, oh, this student did not submit test scores, they must have been really low. I honestly personally believe that they are still allowing students to submit test scores, because there are some schools or some students across the US who have had the opportunity to take it. And I think colleges really want to acknowledge those students and the work that they put in to study for that test and pay for the test and take the test. So they still want students to be able to submit and show their ability to actually take the test. but absolutely not. And schools should not hold any weight to your SAT score. So feel confident that if a school has gone test optional and you either have taken the test or haven't taken the test and you do not want to submit your scores, you will not be held at a lower standard than any other student that is applying that did submit their test scores. So yeah, reach out to the school specifically, I guess, if you have more questions on how they're going to weigh test scores. But again, I don't think any of my students or any student across the US should be concerned with that.
Is it true that essays matter more this year? What resources do you recommend a student uses to make their essays as strong as possible? So I think that because COVID-19 has affected so many different parts of the application process, like testing, like Kai was talking about, there is a little bit more of an emphasis put on essays this year, just because it's really going to allow admissions counselors to be able to see what you're like and what you care about and what you want to share in that essay. And there are a lot of resources. My favorite is College Essay Guy. He has a lot of different videos that he does on writing your personal statement or writing your PIQs for the UCs or writing like the Why This College essay, which is really popular for a lot of places. And you can like take any of those free classes or use those free resources. And then also your advisor is happy to work with you on your essay as long as you give them enough time to edit it and like talk through it with you. I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you're doing a good job of like planning out your time and giving yourself the time necessary to work on your essay. I don't think you need to feel like your essay needs to be like 10 times better than if you had applied last year to college. I think it's just being yourself and like writing about who you are and what you care about and sharing your story with admissions.
Yes, and so also real quick, the question that came in, you missed the first 20 minutes. Yes, this will be available on our YouTube, CSE Advisors, so definitely check that out. And then also a question, just to reiterate also what Juliana said, yes, essays are going to be your moment to shine and, talk about yourself. And also just make sure that you're maximizing your space, especially because you don't have SAT scores this year from most schools. Definitely don't reiterate your application and talk about, any extracurriculars you've been in or your grades, because that will be reflected in other parts of your application, in your transcript and your resume. So definitely take that moment to speak to something that's important to you and really get to show the admissions officers, if you were to accept the student, what type of person would we be admitting to campus? What's their character? What's their personality like? What has really impacted them? And that comes with being specific and being vulnerable and showing your core values. So again, college essay is great, and talk to your advisor as well. And then also another question that came in: what does being deferred mean? So being deferred means that you were not outright denied. You did not get a no, but maybe your application was not as strong to the point where they wanted to give you a definitive yes if you're applying early action. And they definitely wanted to still give you some consideration, but they were not ready to accept you at that time. So if you apply early action and you were deferred, then that means you have the option to have your application reviewed for regular decision. This personally happened to me when I applied to UChicago. I applied early action. I did not get an early action, but I was deferred to regular decision, in which I indicated you do have to indicate whether or not you want your application to continue, and then you will be considered among the regular applicant pool, and then you will be given a decision at the end. And then also, just to go on top of that, what do you define a dream school? Again, it's really what the prime experience of that you want. If there is a school that really hits all of your wants and your needs. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a prestigious institution. There could be a dream school that might, in other terms, be a safety school for others or a match school for others, but realistically, a school that has what you want, and realistically, in terms of what you want with your career, what you think would get you there, in the best way possible. All different people and students across the US have different types of dream schools, but realistically, the place that you can really see yourself at and also flourish at and just really enjoy your time there. And that also, has your majors. It really checks off all the boxes. So I would define that as a dream school for me. But Juliana, do you have any other definitions of a dream school?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good idea to have like a ranking of the schools that you're applying to and have an idea of which ones like are your top choices and they're the ones you really want to go to. But I also think it's important to keep in mind that like if you do a good job building your list, all the schools you're looking at should be schools that you could see yourself being happy at. And a lot of times, I think the idea of like a dream school can make it feel like if you don't go to that school, then you haven't really succeeded. But like wherever you go, if you go with like the right attitude and you're feeling like, oh, this is a great opportunity, then it could end up being a dream school for you. I remember in high school, I had this friend who really wanted to go to UVA her entire life. Like UVA was it. And she ended up getting deferred and she went to Virginia Tech instead. And she came back, like we met a year later and we're talking and she was talking about how Virginia Tech had been everything she ever wanted and she didn't even realize it. And so I like to push back against the idea of just like one school being your dream, because I think all of them could be a dream for yourself. That is a little cheesy, but I hope it makes sense. Okay, I also see a question about should I rank as many schools as possible to go for the full ride or just the ones I want to go to? You should only rank the schools you want to go to. I promise, like, you do not want to rank schools that you're not actually interested in, because you're not going to be happy if you end up, like, if you want to live in a big city but you rank Cornell, you're not going to be happy if you get matched to Cornell, because you're going to be stuck in an environment that isn't where you're like meant to be and like where you don't flourish. One thing I would suggest is like looking into maybe schools you didn't know about. There are a lot of partners at Questbridge that aren't like the Ivies that are excellent institutions. And so definitely looking into those and doing some research. But there are more, like, definitely do not rank schools that you're not interested in attending. Yeah.
Yes, double reiterate that. Please do not rank colleges. Again, you are welcome to do what you feel is right. But also, if you're matched to your 8th institution and it's Dartmouth and you really, really do not want to go live in New Hampshire in a rural county, that could potentially, again, you can make it what you want to, but that could potentially lead to just an unhappy undergrad. So definitely do your research into those institutions. Do it now and do it thoroughly into all of the institutions, because again, on the other end of the spectrum, you could be surprised by a college you would never have considered on Questbridge. So do your research and talk to your advisor as well on, the ranking order. And also another question, are college interviews important to take? We kind of answered this earlier, but also not all colleges offer interviews. If they do offer you an interview, I would suggest, definitely, accept it and take it. That's the chance for a college to learn more about you and the person that you are. And it can be a great opportunity to boost your application. Again, it really will depend on whether or not your college offers you an interview, or if they offer interviews to all students. I would still highly recommend that if you have the ability and the time to do it, to go ahead and, still advocate for yourself. Because the more that you can, advocate for yourself and really broadcast yourself to the schools you're applying to, the better. But realistically, they are not, the defining factor of a college admissions decision if they're optional for a college. So it really is up to you. But, if their option is there, I would still recommend you take it. Any last minute questions before we sign off?
You can also leave questions if you're watching this and it's not live on YouTube. You can leave questions in the comments on YouTube and we'll respond to them as soon as we see them. Yeah, I think just to kind of reiterate, the most important point from tonight is just when you're making your college list, try not to limit yourself. Try to look into all of the different opportunities or options that could be good for you. And it's so much easier to apply now, and it's like applying isn't committing yourself to it for forever. It's just having it be like a possible school you could go to. And I think it'll really benefit you if you're able to create a balanced list and have like a good mix of safeties, matches, and reaches.
All right. Well, if that is it with questions, thank you for everybody for joining us today. We are really excited to have you here today, and we're happy to answer your questions, and we hope that this was helpful for you in any way, shape, or form. Again, if you do have any other questions and you do have an advisor through College Point or College Advising Corps, definitely reach out to them. They would be more than happy to help you with any form of college list building. If you do not have an advisor and you still need help, definitely reach out to your school and your guidance counselor. They would be happy to help. And definitely, use these resources that we talked about to, guide your decision. But yeah, again, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for future events. Next week, we're going to be having College Search Unplugged. And then in November, we'll be doing a financial aid live to talk about all that fun stuff. But we hope you have a wonderful afternoon, evening, and we'll be back soon.